Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of On the Range. And once again, we're in the A-10C Warthog, and today we're going to look at a very important concept when it comes to getting bombs on target, and that's the sensor point of interest, SPI or SPI. So let's get airborne here. Okay, brakes release. Now, in a nutshell, the SPI is simply the point on the ground that the bomb is going to impact if you're in a CCRP release, or if you're releasing an inertially aided munition (JDAM) type bomb. It's just what the aircraft is going to guide you towards, and calculate a release point for to get a bomb to impact on your SPI. Okay, airborne gear up, flaps up. This is about take 9 or 10 of this video. The SPI is such a simple concept, but you can make it a lot more complicated and a lot harder on yourself than you have to. So just thinking of it as the bomb impact point really is the easiest way to go about it. It has a lot more other uses for just for sensor management and just a whole lot of other stuff that you can do with it. But yeah, bomb impact point. We'll go with that. So by default, and I'll zoom into the HUD here so we can see some of the indications that we get. By default, your currently selected steer point is your SPI, sensor point of interest. I can tell that the steer point in this case is SPI because I have STPT down in the bottom left of my HUD, and also I have a line running from the steer point to my velocity vector. Let me bump it back down. So yeah, you can see the line running from the steer point to the velocity vector. So at a glance, I can tell that's my SPI. Now you can see as the SPI gets outside of the HUD field of view, now the line goes from the velocity vector to the SPI. So that's just at a glance you can tell what's going on and tell what your SPI is and what the computer in the A-10 is calculating as the release point and impact point for the bomb. So let's go ahead and set up on the target area out here. We'll go for steer point. Let's go for steer point 4 today. That's a BTR or personnel carrier set of targets. So again, okay, I'm coming around. I've got my velocity vector with the line pointing towards my SPI. It is 30 degrees off the node for a distance of 15 nautical miles. And again, just to confirm, the steer point is the currently selected SPI because STPT is in the bottom left-hand side of the HUD. Now, you're very rarely going to bomb on your steer point. All things considered, right now, if I did nothing else and just entered into a CCRP release on my current SPI, the bombs would impact the steer point. Now, that's very, very rarely what you want to do. So in the majority of cases, you're going to be using one of your sensors as, a guide, and you're going to tell the aircraft that, okay, I want my SPI to be where my sensor is pointing. So that can be through any of your sensors. It can be, through the tactical awareness display. You can slew your cursor over to a certain point and make that your SPI. It can be through your HUD by, right now I'm just slewing my TDC down, and I can make that my SPI. I can pull up a targeting pod and, point it at a location, make it my SPI, or I can pull up a Maverick and point it at a location, make it my SPI. So no matter what sensor you're using, you designate where the sensor is pointing as the SPI by going TMS forward long. TMS being the left-hand switch on my joystick. So if I go TMS forward long, right now my HUD is my sensor of interest. So by going TMS forward long, I make my TDC in the HUD my SPI. And so as you can see, I now have the line running from my TDC to my velocity vector, and I can see that TDC is displayed on the bottom left corner of my HUD. So at a glance, I can tell that it changed. It's now, instead of the steer point, it's the TDC. And that happened because I went TMS forward long with my HUD as my sensor of interest. Now, it's the same process no matter what your sensor is. So let's say that I want to make the location that my targeting pod is pointed, my SPI, and, base all of my bombing calculations and bombing impact point off of that. So what I could do is make my targeting pod my sensor of interest. I see an aircraft target out there, Hilo. I'll worry about that later. Make my targeting pod my sensor of interest. slew my cursor down to a likely looking target. We'll just go for a random building out here. This little group of buildings right here will do nicely. And you just have to point at it, go TMS forward long, and now, as you can see, the targeting pod diamond is now my speed. And again, at a glance, you can tell that's the speed because I have the line running from the diamond to my velocity vector, and I have TGP displayed in the bottom left corner of my HUD. So, I mean, that's very simply speaking how it works. You know, I'll bring up my Dismas. I've got the Mark 82 selected, so I'll set up in a CCRP release mode, and I'll go master arm to arm. And now it's going to guide me to that a release point based on my current speed, which is where my targeting pod is pointing. That in a nutshell is how it works. Now, from here it gets really, really complicated. I mean, that's really all that you need to know, is that, you know, it starts out as your steer point, and then, you know, you just designate something else as your speed by going to TMS forward long. I mean, in a nutshell, that's it. But it can get a little bit more complicated. I will get into a little bit of it here since we still have time. So, I can reset my speed to the steer point by going TMS afterlong. And I'll show you why this can be useful. Okay, so I just went TMS afterlong. So now steer point 4 is my speed. I've got steer points in the bottom left, and I've got my line running from the velocity vector to my speed. And since it is outside of the HUD field of view, the line runs from the velocity vector to the speed, and I get the indication I've got about 90 degrees to go, 6.2 nautical miles in range. Okay, so right now I'm set up and I'm getting CCRP release steering cues based on the steer point. So again, you'll never, hardly ever want to release just on a steer point. But what this gives you the ability to do is designate the steer point as the speed, and then you can use your China hat, and that's the switch on the bottom of your right throttle. Go China hat forward long, and that's going to slave all of your sensors to your current speed. So by doing that, now I have everything on the aircraft pointed at the steer point. I can slew my targeting pod over, get on a specific target, and then make my targeting pod speed by going TMS forward long. And now I have a very specific target that I'm set up for release on, and that's the point that I'm being guided to right now. So, you know, you can use the steer point to get you in the right general vicinity, and then, you know, using your individual sensors, you know, it can be anything. It can be your TAD, it can be your HUD, it can be your targeting pod, it can be your Maverick. Use your sensor to get a specific target and to get very, very precise with your bombing. So what we'll do is, okay, go to point track on that guy. I'll just do a CCRP release for the Mark 82 since we're set up right now and I need to get rid of some bombs here. We have time. Okay, so my current speed is the targeting pod location that is pointed at right now. I've got 90 degrees to go, 2.6 miles, so I am set up, Mark 82, master arm to arm. All I need to do is guide on this target. Okay, I think it was lying to me before. Okay, about 90 degrees to go, 3.2 miles, 70, 60, picking up steering cues, 30 miles, 30 degrees, 3 miles, steering cues, 16, 15 seconds to release. And I'm just going to run in on this location, depress and hold the weapons release switch. Okay, watch the indication come on down. Okay, release, and we'll see how this does. Okay, picking up some ground fire, but let's see how we do here, see how close we got. Okay, hit a little bit long, but you know, it's in the right general location. That's exactly what you get out of the CCRP release, and it did what it was supposed to do. It sent the bomb in on the speed. Okay, so let me show one more feature, and this is a very, very useful feature. It's one that you hear discussed all the time. People trying to figure out how to do it on the internet forums, or you know, it's one of the A-10's bread and butter type things. So Let's go ahead and go TMS aft long, and this is going to put my speed back to that steer point. So again, starting with the steer point is just a frame of reference. I use that to get me in the right general vicinity, and then I can go China hat forward long. That's going to slave all of my sensors over to that point. So I've got a little bit of extension now. I can go ahead and start coming back around and pick this point up in my targeting pod. And what I'm going to do is, and a couple of those steps were unnecessary, but you'll see how this works. So I'm going to pick up this target on my targeting pod, zoom in, then go narrow field of view, get in close on this guy, go point track. I'm going to go TMS forward long to make that my speed. So now what I can do is I can call up a Maverick. And I'll go with a K model. And right now my AGM-65 is just pointing out there in the distance. I've got it as my sensor of interest. I can slew it around, but I already have set up as a SPI a pretty good target already called up in my targeting pod. So all that I need to do now, and I can verify that, okay, I've got targeting pod as my SPI. I've got the line pointing over to my targeting pod diamond, 90 degrees up my nose, 6.1 miles. All I need to do now to slew this Maverick over is go China hat forward long, and everything on the aircraft is going to slew over to that location. As long as I am within the gimbal limit. Okay, so there we go. I am looking exactly where the targeting pod was looking. Let me go narrow field of view. Let me go track, and there we go. It's as easy as that. I just used, the targeting pod to set up a sensor point of interest SPI when China hat forward long to slave all my sensors on the aircraft over to that location. Now all of a sudden, hey, I didn't have to do anything with my Maverick as far as slewing at all. I just snapped it over to where my targeting pod was looking, and it's a surefire lock every time. So that can be a little bit easier in a lot of cases than using the slew controls on the Maverick to get a lock. I'm going to go ahead and pickle this guy off and take that target out. Okay, let me go back to my targeting pod, and since that is still the sensor point of interest, it was still pointed right there. I hadn't touched it, so there we go. There's good impact on that APC. Okay, so I've got one more demonstration, and this is a neat one. I always knew it was possible, but I'd never tried it until before. So let me just kind of go through everything that we've covered here. Okay, what I'm going to do is select steer point 5. That's another APC target, armed personnel carrier target. I'm going to make steer point 5 my sensor point of interest by going TMS aft long. Okay, so now steer point 5 is my sensor point of interest. I'm going to slay everything over there, going China hat forward long. See, and now my targeting pod is looking at steer point 5. So let me make my targeting pod my sensor of interest. I'll slew it around a little bit and see what we can pick up here. Let me go wide field of view, see, get some context here. Okay, what I wanted was something with 3 targets. I don't like that target. I'm going to go back to my steer point as my sensor of interest and pick up, hey, let me just go for my standard tank target here. I'll go for steer point 3 as my steer point. Okay, I just went, again, TMS aft long to make my steer point my SPI. China hat forward long to slave everything over there. Now my targeting pod is going to be looking at that steer point. And you'll see why this is important here in a second. It's neat, but it's a little bit complex. Okay, so let me just kind of come around and get myself into a position where I'm looking into that target area. Okay, masked by my airframe. Let me just bring it on around completely. Okay, so now let me go narrow field of view and zoom in on these targets. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the mark feature and create mark points on each of these targets. And you'll see why I'm doing this here in a second. So okay, let me go TMS right. That's mark point number 1. Okay, zoom out. Pick up this next target. Okay, TMS right, it's mark point number 2. Zoom out, pick up third target. Okay, slew it over. Let's go TMS right, that's mark point number 3. And let me just kind of pull out of the area. So now what I did was I set myself up with 3 mark points. And what I'm going to do is use that steer point feature. I'm going to make those mark points my SPI. So let me see if I can remember how to do this. Okay, I'm going to go to mark on my steer point selector knob. And now, okay, I've got mark A, B, C, and mark Z. And that's another, this is a almost worthy of its own video. Mark Z is the point where my last weapon impacted. But the 3 that I'm worried about are mark A, B, and C. Those are the ones that I just designated. Now you probably already guessed what I'm going to do here. I'm going to release 3 JDAMs on one pass, and I'm just going to use that, making the steer point the SPI feature to do this very, very quickly. So to make these steer points my SPI, I just go TMS aft long, and now that's going to feed in those target coordinates to the weapons as they come around. So all I've got to do now is fly towards the target, ripple off a bomb, step to the next steer point, ripple off a bomb, step to the next steer point, ripple off a bomb, step to the next steer point, and I've got 3 JDAMs going in on 3 separate targets on one pass. And that's a very easy and a very slick way to do this. Okay, so I'm set up and just going to go into the area. I can pick up a little bit of altitude here just to stay out of the ground fire. That's the entire point of this technique and of using JDAMs. Okay, so I've got a ways to go before they're in range. So mark point A, and you can see, just to confirm, I'm on the right SPI. I've got steer point selected as my SPI, and that just means that, okay, this bomb is going to steer on that point. So let's go ahead and wait until we get in range and see what we can do. Okay, so it's ticking around. What I'm looking for is I have a launch acceptability range denoted by these 2 ticks on the reticule. What I'm going to wait for is for the indicator to start coming around, so that the indicator's between those 2 marks, which should happen right about now. Okay, weapon 1 away, stepping to the next steer point. Weapon 2 away, next steer point. Weapon 3 away. So that's that. And let me just, in the targeting pod, watch the show, see how this works. Okay, got about 17, 16 seconds, 15 seconds counting down to impact. And what should happen is I should get impacts on all 3 of these. 7 seconds, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, impact 1. Come on, they're maneuvering. Impact 2. And this is going to miss because they started to maneuver. Impact 3. But hey, that's that is so neat. I had always known that that was possible. I had just never sat down and really figured out the ins and outs of making that work. So there's a technique, and it's probably way more in the weeds than you need to know. I mean, in a nutshell, okay, sensor point of interest, it's where the bomb's going to hit. But there's so much neat stuff that you can do with it, and that's just one example. So hey, thanks again for watching, and if you did enjoy the video, please do consider subscribing to the channel, leave a like even, and leave a comment in the comment section below. It sure does help, and I will see you next time.